1.5 Time in Motion Part 3. Alexander Calder is one of our kinetic works of, artists. This is a beautiful mobile, a moving work of art. It captures wind and it captures, sometimes people are gesturing or, waving their hands and it'll create a bit of air and this piece will move. It really relies a lot on balance. You can't really see it from here, but when you try to construct one of these pieces, a lot of people use the mobile as a art project for a course like this. I would do that in the real world, but it's not as easy as it looks to get this juncture with this piece to sit just so and have another piece and another piece, because as soon as you add something and add the weight to it and the extension of it, it throws off the other shapes and the other places where these forms are. But anyway, this is beautiful work. He started this in the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s, and these are moving pieces. He also had a series called stabiles, and they were stable. So mobile, mobile, stabile, stable. So he invented this form, and it's a type of kinetic sculpture. He wasn't the very first kinetic artist, but he was certainly one of the best and earliest, and it relies on air currents. This guy, Theodorus Jansen, he's amazing. And if you get a chance, and I'll try to upload one of these videos, these are just gorgeous. Same thing, wind-driven. But what happens is the wind pushes these sails, and then it does this funny little march. These things lift their legs, and it sort of replicates walking. So this sort of a monster, this is the Strawn Beast number 48, and there's multiple, obviously number 48, but there's multiple versions of these, and he just takes these lightweight plastic tubes and he puts them together. And it's something, he's Dutch, so I don't know what these plastic tubes come from, but it's some sort of building material that he gets. Some empty plastic bottles, and then he has these little sort of tinker toy sort of joints he makes, and the thing walks. It's elegant, it's beautiful. Oh, it's just a gorgeous piece, but it captures some of the air in these sails, and then it pushes the thing forward. So they do move by themselves. Now here we go to Duchamp, and Duchamp's really important in so many ways. Kinetic work is one of his most important contributions to the art world. If you look at the date on this, 51, it's a little bit deceiving. He actually made this in the early teens, I think 1918, and then he remade it in 1951. He transformed the use of common materials. He was the first one to do this. So he took this bicycle wheel and a stool and he connected them together. He's a Dadaist, another ism for the early 20th century. And then the Surrealists took off from his juxtapositions of two objects in an unusual way. But this is actually a Dadaist piece. He is not a Surrealist. A lot of people will say he is not. He's a Dadaist, and he comes up with this idea of these ready-mades, meaning the wheel was already ready-made, the stool was already ready-made, and then he makes it into a piece of art by his intention of making it into art. That's what makes it art, not necessarily the materials. Like when you're using oil paint, then that is going to be used for art, if that makes sense. These are ordinary objects. He transforms them into art. So it's a little bit off the subject, but he's responsible for ready-mades. He's also responsible for kinetic work. So this is the very first kinetic piece made in the world, that I know of anyway, and I've been looking at this a while. And this actual bicycle wheel does move, so you could spin it and it would move. The reason it says 1951 is because this was thrown away twice by museum workers, thinking that it was just junk, a bicycle wheel and a stool in storage. So it's kind of the irony of the ready-made, and that's why the date is deceptive. So we looked at actual motion, kinetic work, and now we're going to look at time. So an artwork that deals with events, it has to show how this time is going by, and it has to communicate this passage of time. So one piece we're going to look at is in a painting, and this work, The Meeting of St. Paul and St. Anthony and St. Paul. So the passage of time. Now, if we remember our atmospheric perspective, we don't actually see that here. If you notice, these trees are almost as detailed as those trees. They're very similar. Atmospheric perspective isn't quite in play just yet in 1430 in certain parts of the world. So he's not really using that exactly. A little bit, but not exactly. It's sort of a transitional phase. There is a bigger tree here and a smaller tree here, and there is overlapping. But otherwise, that fading away in the distance isn't quite happening. Okay, so back on track. Our figure starts here, zigzags over here, and goes here. Now, how do we know this? Further away is going to be the distant. So in his idea, the passage of time is happening because he's the furthest away from us, if that makes sense. So this is actually a much longer passage of time. It's not just, one day or a series of days. It is a long journey, and certain things happen. Like this is his beginning of his journey, his second part of his journey when he interacts with the centaur. Temptation. This is temptation over here, and then he reunites or unites with St. Paul. Oh yeah, the linear method. That's the one I was going for. So it's not linear perspective. Don't get confused. It's not atmospheric perspective. It's the linear method, and comic book writers use it, and that is what he is using here in this painting.